right? Thank you. I often forget. Okay, so identification of basket of goods, right? So that's one thing. Then another thing, the second step to, for calculating CPI is to record two set of prices. Now, this is very interesting to discuss that. How is that done? Record two set of prices, right? Okay, now there are basically the way it happens is that at the start of the period, you need to look at the prices at which the product is selling. So simple example of that would be, let's say on 1st January 2021, how much was the price of 1 kg of wheat, or how much was the price of 1 kg of rice, and so on and so forth, right? Obviously recording the price of all the goods and services that you are including in the CPI. Record two set of prices, start of period and end of period. Are you guys clear on this? Are you guys getting me? Start of period, end of period, right? And that period can be anything. Normally it's calculated for 1 year, but it's not always the case, right? Start of period and end of period. Okay, now moving forward, end of period, right? Period can be 1 year, period can be 6 months, period can be a quarter, whatever it is, right? Okay, now we'll see in a bit how that is actually done, right? Then the third thing that is a very important step of calculating CPI, that is to assign weights to products. Now, this is the part where a lot of students get confused. So let me tell you that what this means, assign weights. Now, think about this. Okay, what is weights? Weights are a way, it's a mathematical way to assign different like varying importance. That would be the word, right? So assigning weight means that you are assigning different importance to different goods. Now, what I mean by that, think about this. What is more of a problem for you? Rise in the prices for the electricity, or rise in the prices of Samsung Note 10? I don't know if that is even a version of the phone, right? So what is more of a problem, right? So that is, isn't it subjective? Okay, wow, very nice. Never expected that answer. Elasticity. Electricity. Okay, Royal said electricity. Yeah, exactly. I would say electricity. Why? So because think about it, everyone is using electricity. Abdul Rahim, think about this. Without electricity, you don't even feel like using your iPhone or your Samsung or whatever it is, right? That was on a lighter note. But what I'm trying to say over here is that yes, for some people, I mean, they do get affected. I'm not saying some people do buy Mercedes, some people do buy those expensive items, but that is not what is affecting a typical consumer, or not everyone. Are you getting me? That's a better way of putting it, right? So not everyone. Food is one thing that everyone consumes, and that is something that you have to assign more weights to, right? Similarly, think about this. If education is getting expensive, healthcare is getting expensive, that would be priority for a country, rather than trying to reduce the price of something, I don't know, some expensive brand of clothes or something, right? So what I'm saying over here is, and the ideal way to understand this when we come to that part, right? Right now, you are familiar, in fact. Do you know how much is the weightage of paper one in AS economics? There are two exam components, right? So paper one, how much is the weightage for paper one in AS economics? If I ask you that, because that would really help you to understand what we mean when we say assign weights. Does anyone know? No one knows. Okay, so 40% is the weightage, right? So think about this, students, 40% is your weightage for paper one. That means what? That your MCQ paper, this is how it works, right? So 40% is the weightage for paper one and 60% is the weightage for paper two. Which of the two exam components is more important? Knowing the fact that this is the weightage for the two papers, which of the two is more important? Yes, that's correct. Which of the two is more important? Which of the two is more important? Right? Obviously, it's paper two. Yes or no? Excellent. Very good. Right? So the thing is that if this weightage would have been 50-50, then it means that the two papers are equally important, right? Because your overall grade is equally dependent on how well you perform in paper one and how well you perform in paper two. I repeat myself. If the weightage of the two components is same, this means that both components are equally important, in terms of determining your final grade. But when one component has more weightage compared to the other one, then it means that that component with higher weights is more important compared to the other one. Got it? Am I making sense? Right? Are we good? So we will discuss more of this when we start calculating the CPI in a bit, right? So we are left with the last step. Okay, so but who decides like which thing is more important than the other? That's a good question, Abdul Rahim. So the thing is that economists, right? So these are economists who are sitting in, in this, what is that called? In these government departments, who have good knowledge of, क्या नाम है, good knowledge of economics, and they are the ones. So they have, most of them are even doctorate, like they have done PhDs in economics. So they are the one who are determining that how much weight should be assigned to each item and so on, right? Obviously that can be subject to error and stuff like that. I'm not saying that they are flawless, but still they are more informed about these things, right? Okay, so I was just a quick thing. I was reading, I was looking at this thing that was going on. And in that, I just came to find out that the governor of State Bank of Pakistan, right, has done his PhD from University of Berkeley, right, USA, right? And I'm sure that this would be the case with the other countries as well, India and all the other countries, right? So what I'm trying to say is that State Bank and the central banks of countries are, running such an important thing, the monetary policy. So they have to hire some very exceptional people, right? Are you getting me? So, and they have a PhDs, right? Okay, now this being said, let's move on. Let's keep this constant. Assign weights, and then the fourth and the last thing that you have to do to calculate inflation is simply to do the calculation. Calculate, right? So let's write it down like this. So students, what we are doing right now is we are calculating, we are looking at how is inflation calculated. The way inflation is calculated in any country is through this method that is known as CPI, which stands for Consumer Price Index. Then there can be some other price index that we will not talk about, retail price index, producer price index. So there are a couple of different price indices, right? But we'll not talk about that, right? So what you need to remember for your purposes is that consumer price index, which is, short form of which is written as CPI, that is used to calculate inflation. What are the 4 easy steps? First of all, you have to identify the basket of goods. What is basket of goods? Basket of goods are the typical products that a typical consumer consumes, right, in a country. What is the second step? The second step is to record 2 set of prices. What do I mean by 2 set of prices? So prices of products at the start of the period and prices of products at the end of the period, right? And then you have to assign weights. Assign weights, why so? Because not every product is equally important. Not every product is equally important. So what you are doing in this case, in step number 3, that products that you think are more important for consumers, they will be assigned higher weights compared to other products that are less important, right? Are you getting me? And then the fourth and the last stage of calculating inflation is to calculate, right? So that's just the calculation that we're just about to see in a bit, right? So there's a comment, questions on calculating inflation rate comes in exam by CPI. Okay, now that's a very good question. Thank you for asking this, Preet. So the way it happens is that they will not ask you to do the calculations. There will be essay questions. I have seen in the past papers, examiners have asked about how is inflation calculated, but that you have to write in your own words. You don't have to do what we're about to do right now, but why are we learning this in class? So that you get a better idea of how that's done. But you have to answer that in your words, like it is a descriptive answer. Am I making sense? Right? So you will write in your own words how is inflation calculated. You will not be expected to do the calculations, but if you want to, if you have time on the exam, you can do that. But there can be definitely a question in the essay question that asks you that how is inflation calculated. Generally, it is it is termed like this, that how is CPI constructed? So the question wording goes like, how is CPI constructed, right? Are you getting me? Is this making sense to everyone? Is there a formula for calculating weights? Because on my book, it says expenditure on the total good. Okay, I'll tell you, Abdul Rahim, yeah. That's the rule of the thumb. That's the rule of the thumb, exactly, right? So when you come to this part in a bit, I'll tell you, yes, that's correct. What you read in the book, that's correct. Okay, now think about it, students. So the first step is identifying basket of goods. So what are the typical goods and services that consumers consumes? That will be your goods and services. How many of you are getting me over here, right? We have already discussed that, right? So that's the first stage. Then the second stage is recording 2 set of prices. Prices P1, how about we name it as P1 and P2? Now P1 would mean prices of these products at the start of the period. P2 would mean prices of these products at the end of the period, right? Are you getting? Then you have to make 2 more columns. It is the proportion of total expenditure spent on a particular item. Excellent, Simon. That's absolutely correct. Very good, right? So what is the total spending? What is the proportion of income that you spend on a particular product? That is how the weights are determined, right? We'll come to that part in a bit. Very good. Okay, the goods and services. P1, prices at the start of the period, prices at the end of the period. Then you have original index value. Again, this is something that we will calculate. Original index value, and then you have new index value, and then original index value. Oh, I missed the column for weight. Sorry. So it's P1 starting. The starting period prices, then it's P2, the ending period prices, then the next column after this is weights, right? That which products are more important, this is what the weights will tell you, right? Then you have weights, then you have original index. So we will make two further columns, original index value and new index value. Original index value. Okay, so by the way, quick thing, the students informed me that in both India and Pakistan, it's on the same day. The exam is on the same day, right? So this means that it makes our life easier because we will plan accordingly, right? So paper 2, I'm assuming, is on 13th of October. Is this correct? So I'm assuming that most of you, or in fact, perhaps all of you, are taking October-November exam, right? And in both countries, it's on 13th of October, right? So this means that we will be going really fast, right? So we'll be going really fast because we not only want to complete our syllabus, but we also need to do some past paper practice, right? Yes or no? And I'll see that if I can have longer sessions, or we can also have sessions on Saturdays and Sundays, right? Then we'll do that. Okay, now let's keep moving. Let's keep moving. So think about this. So what are the different columns that we have created over here? Okay, so we have first column for goods and services. We'll list down the goods and services that have to be part of consumer price index. Then we will record two set of prices at the start of the period, prices at the end of the period. Then you have to assign weights to these different products. Then you will calculate the original index value, and then you will calculate the new index value, right? So shall we get started? Okay, now what are generally the items that typical consumers consume? What are all the items that we generally consume in our daily life, right? So that will definitely include electricity, that will include food, that will include fuel, that will include education, that will include healthcare, right? And there's a long list, right? But obviously we will not include all these items because that will make our calculation longer, which we don't want to. Okay, now think about this. So we are saying that these are the 5 products that a typical consumer consumes in this country, right? But to quickly tell you that the way it works in actual CPI. In actual CPI, I just told you that there are approximately 600, 700 products, or perhaps maybe more, right? So the actual CPI calculation is very, very detailed. It's not like they don't say food. Food can mean different things. Does food mean KFC prices? Does food mean McDonald's prices? Does food mean, the price of wheat or rice? What, right? So in reality, in the actual CPI calculation, food would not be there. It would be specific items, right? Like wheat prices, or, let's say rice prices and so on. Are you guys getting me? Are you guys getting me, right? But obviously we don't have that much time and we want to keep it simple. So we will just sum it up. We'll put everything in one category, that is food. Similarly, electricity, fuel, education, healthcare. Okay, now let's get started. Now, let's say 1 kg of wheat at the start of the period was 100 rupees. Then at the end of the period, the price was 150. Are you guys getting me? What I'm doing over here? So in this column, I'm writing the price that was the price of this product at the start, and then in this column, I'm mentioning the price at the end of the period. Got it? Simple. Okay. Now, similarly, let's assign, I'm making these values up, as you can tell, right? So let's say 1 unit of electricity at the start of the period was 75. At the end of the period, each unit of electricity has increased to 85 rupees, right? Then the fuel in Pakistan, I don't know, it is approximately at the start, let's say it was 110 or 100 maybe, and now it's 120 rupees per liter, right? Education, this is a little difficult to quantify, but we can say that, let's say a typical public school fee in Pakistan was 5,000 per month at the start of the period, and now it has, let's say, increased to 5,400 rupees per month, right? Similarly, healthcare, a typical visit to a doctor in Pakistan costed 1,000 rupees previously, and now that has increased to 1,200, or let's say 1,100, right? Are you getting me? So this is how I have filled the values here. How many of you are getting me over here? Is everyone clear on this? Are there any questions, any confusion, right? Okay, now comes in an important part, weights. Now, out of these 5 items, we have to assign weights, right? Out of these 5 items, we have to assign weights, and weights are always out of 100%. Weights are always out of 100%. Are you guys getting me or not? Right? Okay, now think about this. Out of 100%, if I say that each of these products are equally important in determining the cost of living, I repeat myself. If I say that each of these 5 items are equally important in determining the cost of living for the citizens, then I will assign how much weight to each. Then I'll assign how much weights to each if these items are equally important. Yeah, let's see if you know. Right, 20%. Excellent, excellent. So then I will assign 20% to each item because these are equally important. And I just said that weights are always assigned out of 100. So 100 divided by 5 gives you 20. Nothing complicated. But in reality, let's keep this example a little more realistic. And let's say that food is still, more important compared to, other items, right? So how about we give food more weights compared to other items, right? So I will already convert it into a decimal number, right? So let's put it in decimal numbers. So instead of writing 30%, because 30% means 30 divided by 100. So how about I just write 0.3, right? To make things easier. Now electricity, let's say it's not that important. So it's 0.1. Then for fuel, it's a little important, right? Because travel is based on this. I mean, I'm just assigning arbitrarily, right? Okay, another thing, but in fact, let's keep it like that. Abdul Rahim, I'll explain you. Just give me a minute. Achha, so what you have read in the books, that's correct, right? So weights are assigned on the basis of importance, and that importance is determined on the basis of proportion of income that consumers spend on different goods. I repeat myself. Do you guys understand what proportion means? It's simply the percentage. So if Pakistani consumers spend, let's say, 30% of their spending on food, right? So that's why we have assigned 30% weights to food. If Pakistani consumers spend 10% of their typical monthly spending on electricity, we have given 0.1, and so on and so forth. Are you guys getting me or not? Is it making sense or not, right? So the rule of assigning weights is obviously on the basis of importance. And how do we determine the importance of a product? So we determine the importance of a product based on how much proportion of consumers' income a certain product takes. So if a certain product is taking 30% of their spending, then we'll assign a weight of 30%, and similarly so on and so forth. Right? Easy? Is everyone getting me? If there's any confusion, please ask me. Right? So education is important. So I'm assigning this 0.2. Does anyone has a calculator here? Right? So just give me a minute. That will make it easier. Just let me get my calculator here. Sorry, I was on mute. Sorry. Right. So I was saying that when you add these weights up, it has to be out of 1, right? So you add these up, they're adding up to 1, which means 100%. Okay, great. Is everyone clear on this? Can you move on? Okay. Now the next thing that you do, now here's the thing. Now here comes in the calculation part. Original index value. What do? You multiply the original price, the starting price, original meaning the starting price, right? You multiply the starting price of the product with its respective weights. You multiply the starting price of a product with its weight, and you write the value over here. Then similarly for the electricity, starting price was 75 rupees per unit times weights, you write the value here, right? Similarly for fuel, multiply by the weights, you write it here. And similarly for this, you write it here. And similarly for this, you write it here. Is everyone clear on this? So let's quickly do the calculations. In this case, you'll get 30. Then in the next case, you'll get 7.5, right? So I'm just doing the calculation. If anything is confusing, please ask me, right? It's 7.5. Then for the next one, it will be 15. right? Now, then for the next one, it will be 5,000 into 0.2. This gives you 1,000, right? And then for the very last one, it would be 253. Yeah, 250, right? Is it clear on this? Right? So I have multiplied for this column. Original index value, what I've done over here is, yes, great, right? So I've just multiplied the original price of the products with the respective weights. That's all. Nothing complicated, right? Are we good on this? Okay, now move on. Now, how we will calculate the next column? So we will multiply the new set of prices with the respective weights. We'll multiply the new set of prices with the respective weights, which goes like this, right? Let me show you, which goes like this. Right. Okay, Laiba, let me explain you again. So think about this. So original index value, now think about this. This was up till this part. Students, please pay attention. So up till this part was the data that we have gathered from different sources. Up till this part, it was just about the data that we have gathered from different sources. What does that mean? That what are the typical goods that consumer consumes? We have listed 5 items over here. Then we also not calculated, in fact, we gathered the data of what was the starting price of each of these items and what is the closing price of each of these items, right? Then we assign them weights on the base of what? We assign them weights on the base of proportion of income that a consumer spends on these items, right? So if a typical consumer in Pakistan spends 30% of his income on food, then that would be, the weights would be 0.3 and so on and so forth, right? This is making sense. Now for this part, right, exactly. Because this column says original index value. Original index value means, right? So we are just calculating it for the sake of calculating the rate of inflation. Now we are moving towards calculating the rate of inflation, and for that we can't do until we have the index. Exactly. So weight times W1. Very good. Thank you. So think about it, students. So what we did simply was original price times its respective weights. Similarly, the price of electricity at the starting time period multiplied by its respective weights, and so on and so forth, right? And whatever the value we are getting, we're just writing that down in this column. You'll see in a bit, right? Does it make sense? So we just multiplied the original price with the respective weights to get this column. Now for the next column, what will we do? Now for the next column, we will multiply the new set of prices or the closing set of prices with their respective weights, right? So what we'll do is 150, which is the closing price of food, times its respective weight, closing price of electricity 85 times multiplied by its weights, and similarly so on and so forth. Is everyone clear on this? This is making sense. This is making sense, right? P2 times the weight. Very good. Excellent. Right? Okay. Now let's quickly put this down. Clear? Okay, great. Lima, is it making sense? Okay. So now moving forward, great, perfect. Now 150 times, I'm just writing this down directly. So you can also verify the calculations. So that will be 45, 85 times 8.5. Then you have, this will be 8.5. Then you have 120 times 0.15, 100 times 0.15, that gives you 18. Then the next one gives you 5400 times 0.2, which is 1080. And the last of all is 1100 times 0.25, which is 275. Right. So is everyone clear on this so far? Is everything clear so far? Okay. What if we have prices of 5 different years? Okay, just a second. Abdul, that's a good question. Let me answer that. Do we need to choose the last year prices? Okay, that's a very good question. So Abdul, if you just hold on to this thought for a bit, I'll answer that in detail. That's a good question. Okay, so think about it, students. Now what we are about to do next, now we have calculated the original index value and the new index value. Now using these last two columns, I'll calculate the rate of inflation. We'll calculate the rate of inflation. Is this making sense? Right? So using the last two columns, we are about to calculate the rate of inflation now. Okay, now think about this. Weights are taken at start of the, right. Okay, Rohil. So again, to answer your question, I mean, you take the average, right? But you don't need to go in that much detail, right? So you take the average, that what was the proportion of income that you were spending on, food at the start of the period, and that might have changed a little bit, but that doesn't changes drastically. That doesn't changes a lot, right? Are you getting me? But that is some way they have, obviously people who are calculating CPI, they do have some method of doing that. Got it? Right? Okay, great. So weights are basically an average. So it's weights are not at the end of the period or at the start of the period. So weights are generally, so you can say it like this. What is the percentage of income that consumers spend on food generally? That would be their weights. So what we are inferring from this is that in this country, almost 30% of consumers' income is spent on food. That's why we have assigned it a weight of 0.3. Right? Okay, now here comes in the final calculation. Very good. Yes, that's correct. Absolutely. Perfect. Okay, now as Abdul Rahim said, now what we're doing over here is that we will add up first this thing. So we'll add the column of original index value, and similarly we'll add up the values of new index values, and we'll write the total over here. So let's quickly do that, right? And then I'll tell you what we do with these values. 1000 and the last one is 250. So that gives you 13, sorry about the space, 1302.5. And then in the second column, it turns out to be 45, 8.5, 18, 1080, 1080, and the last one goes by 275, which gives you 1426.5. Okay, is anyone clear on this? Any confusion so far, right? So we have calculated the original index, right? And we have calculated the new index value, right? Now some of you might be thinking that this is just index. I'll tell you, right? But index doesn't has any unit. Students, I repeat, index doesn't has any unit, right? Right? This is making sense or not, right? So think about it. It's not prices. These are not technically prices, right? So this is just an index number. Now we are about to calculate inflation from this, right? If this is confusing for you, forget about it. All you need to remember that index doesn't has a unit. So it's not your currency. It's not your weight. It is not your height. Are you getting it? Just like other quantities, other variables, there is a unit associated with it, right? In the case of index number, there is no unit with it. Got it? That's what I wanted to say. Okay, now let's move on. Now the final thing that we're about to do over here is to do the calculation. Now we will calculate. Okay, now let's get rid of this extra stuff. We need space on the board. Okay, now just like you calculate simple percentage change in anything, you guys know how to calculate a simple percentage change in anything, right? That is what we will use to calculate the rate of inflation. As simple as that. So after you have done all the calculations that I just showed you on the graph, that I just showed you on the board, now comes in the final stage, and that is to calculate the rate of inflation. So that would be calculating the percentage change in the new rate and the old rate. Calculating the percentage change in the new rate and the calculating the percentage change in new and old index value. Old minus new, no. You reversed it a little bit. So like that, it would be new minus old divided by old into 100. So the way you calculate the percentage change is new value minus old value divided by old value into 100, right? This is what we do. Am I right with this or not? Old into 100. So this is simply how you will calculate the rate of inflation from here onwards, right? So what is the new index value? Can you see it on the board? So this was the new index value, right? So I've given it the same terminology, same language, same wording, so that we can be more clear on this. What was the old index value or original index value? 1302.5 and divided by the old index value, which is 1302.5, and then simply multiplied by 100. So let's do the calculation and let's see what the rate of inflation turns out to be. 1426 minus 0.5 minus 1. So that gives you 9.5. This is 9.52 to be more precise, right? Okay, so this is your rate of inflation during this time period. This was the country's rate of inflation during this time period. How many of you are clear on this, right? So what I did in the end was simply to calculate the percentage change. To calculate the rate of inflation in the last stage, what I did was to just calculate the percentage change. And how I did that? So that has a formula which is new minus old divided by old into 100. New minus old divided by old into 100 is your rate of inflation. Now let's interpret this, and then I'll answer your question, Abdul Rahim. So what does 9.52 mean? It means that during this time period, prices for goods and services on average increased by 9.52%. I repeat, 9.52% inflation means that during this time period, that could have been 1 year, that could have been 6 months, that could have been anything, right? The prices of products in this country increased by 9.52%. So if something was worth 100 rupees at the start of the period, I repeat myself, if something was worth 100 rupees at the start of the period, at the end of the period, it would be 109.52 rupees. So this is what it means simply. So if something was 100 rupees, that increased by 9.52%, which means the closing price of that item will be 109.5. Is this making sense? Is making sense? Right. It's, yeah, new minus old divided by old into 100. That's correct. Anyone who did not understand this, anyone who did not understand this or any step, because if this is clear, then we move forward. This is not clear, I'll explain you again. Understood? All clear? Very good. Excellent. Okay. Now let's discuss that what type of questions you expect. Excellent. Excellent. Very good. So let's discuss what type of questions you see on the exam. So as I was telling you that, when Preet asked me that it's not that you will be expected to show this calculation on the exam. You're not expected to show the calculation, right? But you need to know this in detail so that you can better answer the question that says that how is CPI constructed. So when you talk about how is CPI constructed, then you talk about all the steps that go into it, which includes, first of all, identification of basket of goods. Then the second is, recording two set of prices, then assigning weights and all that stuff, right? But in MCQs, sometimes they give you this calculation. So in MCQs, what type of questions you can expect to see on the exam? So they would have given you, they would give you new index value, old index value. So this part forward. So on an exam, you can expect MCQ exam I'm talking about. On the MCQ exam, you can expect this part, right? Where you are provided the new index value, which is this, minus old index value, which is this, divided by old index value times 100. Easy? Is this making sense? Is making sense, right? So this is what you need to know. Okay, now one very interesting question that I think Abdul Rahim asked me. Now, if you have data for a lot of different years, now think about this. If you are expected to calculate inflation for a lot of different, just give me a second. This is important. Just give me a second. Okay, so students, are you getting me? Okay, let's try to sum this up. And okay, so think about this. If you have data of different years, right? So let's say you have data of prices from 2015 onwards, right? Now, the question Abdul Rahim asked was that how would we know which year data to choose, right? How do we know which year data to choose, right? That was the question. Correct me if I'm wrong. Now, before you start your calculation, the economist or any person who is doing this calculation would ask him or herself that what I want to calculate. If you want to calculate the inflation for 5 years, for 6 years, in fact, that makes how much? 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. So if you want to calculate inflation for 6 years, then yes, you will use starting prices of 2015 and ending prices of 2021. Abdul, are you getting? Is everyone getting this? Right? On the other other hand, if you want to calculate inflation on, let's say, quarterly basis, right? So last quarter of, last quarter that just, ended, quarter is how many? Quarter is 3 months, 3 months, right? So going back from September, let's say August, July, and June. So if you want to calculate inflation for a quarter, so that will be 1st June 2021. This will be the starting price, right? And then the ending price will be your, what would be your ending price date? That will be 30th August or 31st August, either June, July, August. Yes. So that will be 30th August 2021. How many of you got this, right? So it totally depends on the selection of the year or time period, depends on what the objective is, right? Whether you want to calculate it for an entire year or a quarter or 6 months or whatever, right? Easy, simple. Okay, now students, here's the game plan. The game plan is I'll try my best to do a class tomorrow, but I cannot promise, right? I'll coordinate you with you over the WhatsApp, right? If majority of the students are available, then that will be great. And secondly, all the classes that we are taking here are recorded, and those are available on the YouTube channel. If any one of you don't know which YouTube channel you have to follow, I'll send you the link that goes by the name of Mega Lecture. Even if you just go on YouTube and type this, you'll be able to find it with the same logo that you have on the WhatsApp group, right? Second thing, and these lectures have been already, like the previous lectures have already been uploaded, so you can go and watch those. Secondly, as we discussed, that 13th of October is just around the corner and going fast, so I'll try my level best to create as many classes and spare as much time as much we can, right? But on some days like Fridays, perhaps we can do longer sessions, right? Acha ji, ab inflation mein, so with inflation, we are done with how to calculate inflation. Let me think about this. We are left with anything else, right? So we have talked about pros and cons of inflation, and we have talked about types of inflation. So yeah, so I think we are good. Now we are good, and in the next class, either we have it tomorrow or on Monday, we'll start off with the new topic, that is exchange rate. So we'll start off with the new topic, exchange rate, then move to balance of payments, and then in the end, we will be left with the international trade. So there are 3 more topics left: exchange rate, balance of payments, and international trade. So this is unit 4, and then 1 more unit will be left, but that is very brief. That's very simple. Macroeconomic policies, in which we'll talk about fiscal policy, monetary policy, and all that. Right? Are we good on this? So I'll coordinate with you if tomorrow is a good time to have a class and what time. Normally we'll have it in the evening, right? Post 3 p.m. Right? So I'll coordinate with you. But if not, then we will meet on Monday, right? Same time. So the timings are, you guys know the timings, right? So timings of our AS classes on usual days is 7:45 to 8:30 Pakistani time, right? 7:45 to 8:30. Is everyone clear on this, right? So I'll see you then very soon. Take care. Have a good weekend and enjoy yourself. Bye.